Hey, what's going on? This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com, Norman, London. Mike in Buffalo. It is May 22nd, 2025. The Leafs are not playing. The Final Four is on the go. And the team president is not returning for 25, 26, and beyond. Brendan Shanahan will be looking for work, most likely finding it closer to home in his hometown of New York City. I guess his de facto hometown. He is from Toronto, never bothered living there while the president of the Maple Leafs for the last 11 years. I'm a little bit bitter. The podcast brought to you by Oak Ridge Ford. Low interest rates, decent residuals. I'm your guy for Leafs content. Make me your guy for your next vehicle. Sorry for the disruption there, but anytime I get a phone call on my phone, the whole fucking thing goes kaput, and that's what happened. So it's kind of first world problems, but we're back in business. Mr. Augello, a nice heartfelt message from Brendan Shanahan talking about, joining the club back in 2014 and helping to helping to get it to a place that it hadn't been in a very long time, but not to the level that he had hoped. It's all niceties, and we appreciate what he's done over the last decade, but just really wasn't able to push this team to a place that it needs to be. And now it's time to cut ties and for Shanahan to do whatever he's got to do in this Maple Leafs team to get downright serious about producing when it counts. Good evening.
Good evening, Norm. This couldn't have been that big of a surprise. I think everybody knew, and I think we talked about this ad nauseum over the last few months of the regular season, that Shanahan coming back depended completely and utterly on them making a deep run in the playoffs. And up here, LeBron said conference final, and I pretty much thought that would be the case. That means getting to the Final Four. Then you could say, okay, you could justify that everything that they did and everything that they had done over the last few years finally paid off. Well, no, it didn't. We know it didn't, because this team and the core group simply cannot come through when it counts. And that's essentially the responsibility of Brendan Shanahan, because he doubled down on this core. So when the MLS&E board met today, yesterday they gave him permission to talk to the Islanders. You pretty much knew at that point that he was toast. I joked that they were building the gallows at Maple Leaf Square, and that now Leaf fans are disappointed because they can't see him swinging from the yard arm. But it was time. It was 11 years. He did a great job early on convincing the MLS&E board to do what this team hadn't done in about 10 years, which was bottom out. That turned out to be, they bottomed out for half a season. That turned out to be Mitch Marner. They bottomed out for a full season, and they got Austin Matthews.
Right.
That it was a benefit. But everything after that is tainted with bad decisions and mistakes. And of course, hindsight's 2020, but you and I both were talking about this in the moment. And, now we know that the great span of that 11 years was a failure.
OG's Conference, like the content, and subscribe to the channel. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, OakRidgeFord.com. The Blue Oval, one of a kind, lots of amazing product. We're like sold out of Escapes, Bronco Sports, not many Mach-E's, Select, F-150s. Times are pretty decent, even though we're dealing with tariff pricing, uncertainty, low interest rates. I'm your guy for Leafs content. Make me your guy for your next vehicle. OGs and Converse reach out to me on a daily to help them. I keep it quiet, but it means a lot to me that you guys are supporting what I'm trying to do on the ground, while you're also supporting what I'm doing in the ether, and that is the Leafs Convo. Season 7 coming to a wrap. Brendan Shanahan joined this team when it was at its worst. I mean, it was in the gutter. Its image was terrible. God bless its past and its 12, 11, 13 Stanley Cups, depending on how you view it. But in 2014, this team was just brutal. I mean, the year before, the 3-1, 4-1 debacle in Boston, and you had Randy Carlyle, Ron Wilson, Paul Maurice. It was just a carousel of coaches. It was just going nowhere. And, you know, a guy with 600 goals, Hall of Famer, Stanley Cups, joined the organization. It needed legitimacy. He did what he had to do. He lobbied. He was there at drafts. He was representing the organization, and we needed him then. But after all of that, what the hell has he done? Like, and what was his purpose as a figurehead, as a president slash CEO, or just somebody who's, you know, at the cocktail parties? What, like, really, what has he done other than lobby in a way that's kind of set this team back, Mike?
Well, I mean, he facilitated, you know, he brings in Babcock, and of course, in retrospect, that would turn out to be a mistake. But at the time,
Right,
you know, a guy who was, you know, 2 Olympic gold medals and
he won a cup with
cups, and then that was your goal. And you threw a bunch of money at him, and that was, you know, and then you got the first pick, and you got Austin Matthews. Everything seemed to be on a good path. And they bring in Lou Lamoriello, and they brought in Lou Lamoriello because Mike Babcock was an 800-pound gorilla, and you needed another 800-pound gorilla to counter him because Brendan Shanahan couldn't. So, but, you know, and I wrote about this a couple days ago. The mistakes that were made, it was death by 1,000 cuts. It was not trading Nylander in 2018 before he signed the 6-year deal, and they essentially succumbed to him. They could have traded him for Alex Pietrangelo, and that might have been a very big positive. Then the contracts to Marner, the contracts to Matthews, and not the contracts were bad, but if you're paying somebody the second highest salary in the NHL, you get an 8-year deal, and instead they got a 5-year deal. So all these little things. And then I think the biggest sin of all when it came to Brendan Shanahan is not having the recognition, not listening to not the fans, because these executives are never going to listen to the fans. They're
what
not
do the fans like? If we can talk about this, and we'll do this as evergreen content over the summer. Well, what do the fans know, right? For as illustrious a fan base as we think we are, for the the biggest the most powerful team in the league, arguably, what the hell do we know? Continue, Mike.
Yeah, he's never going to listen. They're never going to listen to the fans. They're never going to listen to the media. But it has to be a recognition of a good hockey man and a wise hockey man to look at that team that lost in 2020 to Columbus, that lost in 2021, blowing a 3-1 lead to Montreal, that lost in Game 7 to Tampa Bay 2-1 on 2 Nick Paul goals.
Right.
This core could not win. And they doubled down on the core. They kept doubling down. And that's the issue here. And they doubled down long enough that they painted themselves into a corner. You know, when Brendan Shanahan's big sin was doing that, and then when finally his handpicked general manager, Kyle Dubas, in May 2023, after they lost to Florida, I was at that press conference. Kyle Dubas was going to break up the core four. And I think that was one of many reasons why he got fired. So the dilemma that this team is in right now with the prospect of Mitch Marner walking away from nothing, that's on Brendan Shanahan.
Right. You know, he comes from an era when there was trust. Right? The coach puts trust in you. The GM puts trust in you. This guy was a London Knight legend. You know, we drafted you for a reason. We trust you. You will get this done for us. He put trust into the core four. So the core four kind of fucked them, Mike. You know, and again, I can't say that those guys gave a shit about him personally, but he had their back. And when push came to shove, in terms of results, they didn't have his. And I'm not empathetic or sympathetic to Brendan Shanahan. Guy lives in New York. He's making what, $3+ million a year.
$7.
Would love to even make a fraction of that. And what does he do? Go to cocktail parties, high five people. You know, wear the leaf on his chest. He's just basically a high-paid mascot with a lot of pedigree as a hockey player. At the end of the day, this guy oversaw a lot of success, but not success when it counted. And we can debate as to whether a guy like that should have had the kind of power he did to usurp or to override what the general manager wanted to do, especially since he was essentially a figurehead. But when push comes to shove, you can make an argument that the guys he had the backs of turn their backs on him when it matters most, and that's why he's probably going to become a high manager or a major official with another organization here in the next couple of days.
Well, I'll quibble about that slightly, because I don't think they let him down. I think they were what they were. It was up to the management team, and he was the point man, to recognize that you had 4 players who are extremely skilled and extremely soft. You know, somebody made the analysis looking at this is, well, the core group was missing a Brendan Shanahan. They were missing a tough SOB. They were missing somebody who would run somebody through the boards.
Can I throw something at you, Mike? And again, people want to hear your knowledge. They don't necessarily want to hear from me, but I run the channel and I'm here. It is what it is. Too bad, so sad. Toronto is a coach's and general manager's nightmare, and you are feeding into it, letting the players off the hook and blaming management and the coaching. Again, Mike, you know better than that.
Well, no, I'm not blaming.
It's historic. You know that. You know it, and you're feeding into it.
I mean, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. You cannot ask a player to be something they're not. Austin Matthews will never be Matthew Tkachuk. He will never run somebody through the boards. He will never be that type of player. You cannot ask an elephant to be a rhinoceros.
But Shanahan was asking them to be that. Why can you not answer the call?
Well, no, his belief and Kyle Dubas's belief was that they could win purely on skill, and we
all thought that. That
was asinine. I mean, I have said forever that you look at the teams that win, and they're diverse. Right. They have skill. They have sandpaper. They're good defensively. They have good to great goaltending. This team, only in the last year or two, started to round out. The defense is better. The goaltending is adequate, but the core was still the same, and that was the problem. They were never going to change. They were always going to be what they were. But Brendan Shanahan should have recognized that, and he did not.
So if I dig up our content from 2018, 2019, we were pretty hopped up on Matthews, Marner, Nylander, who was a bit raw, Tavares, the biggest free agent signing in the history of the organization, and Riley, who was there, right? And I can remember putting together thumbnails for our content that suggested this team was going to have a decade of dominance. And stupid me. But when things got rocky and Babcock was gone and there was an opportunity to make some changes, Shanahan stepped in and said, listen, let's keep this group together. You don't think the onus was on the players to answer that call? Or was it just him being absolutely, at the end of the day, not aware of what the player of today is like compared to the player of his generation? They're just not the same. He probably thought he could reach these guys the same way management of the London Knights tried to reach him to dig deep to score a big goal in a meaningful game, or when he started his career. I don't know, where did he start? In Hartford or places like that? Like it's just different. So that was the disconnect, right? The hockey players all in the same, but generations, their mandates and their understanding of what's required to succeed changes. And they let him down. I suppose what you're trying to say is he let himself down in believing that these guys were like he was.
Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, his history was playing in St. Louis with Hall and Oates. Right. His history was playing in Detroit with Yzerman, Fedorov, Zetterberg, Datsuk. He was forgetting, like I said, about the player that he was. and that type of player being the difference. They had sandpaper guys like McCarty and, on top of the Lidstroms and the Zetterbergs and the Datsus, they had skill.
Was he out of touch?
Yeah, I think he misread the situation. I clearly do. I think, and like I said, I think Kyle Dubas recognized it too late, and then when he tried to change it, that was part of the reason that he got fired. But here's the issue: you mentioned 2019. He said if you went back to content that we did in 2019, of course they wouldn't have broken up the core at that point, because at that point, they lost to Washington in 2017 in 6 games, and everybody was enthused. They went to 7 games with Boston, but nobody thought that they were going to actually win that series, especially after that idiot Nazem Kadri got suspended and then got suspended again in 2019. Okay. And I find it hilarious that everybody.
Why do you think he turned into a lunatic? Because nobody else on the team was doing anything. Isn't that funny? That was just foreshadowing for all the things that were happening or didn't happen in 2025. It's amazing. Anyway,
well, I find it hilarious that I hear people on the radio, and I read people who said like one of the biggest mistakes that Shanahan made was trading Nazem Kadri. No, the mistake was not getting good enough value for Nazem Kadri. He needed to be traded after he stabbed them in the back twice with the suspension. But go back to 2019. They had lost twice to Boston. They had a 3-2 lead against the Bruins in Game 6. They were leading, and they blew that lead and then lost in Game 7. At that point, no, you don't give up on the core because you don't know what they are yet. But after losing to Columbus in the bubble, after losing to Montreal 3-1, you're up 3-1. Right. After losing to Tampa, then you make the move. And they kept saying the core is going to stay. And that is why he's no longer in Toronto.
OG's Converse, like the content, subscribe to the channel. My blood is boiling. My blood is boiling because I want to point the finger at one person who you, Mike, do not want to point the finger at. But I'm going to give it another year. And if we're having this conversation in 1 year's time and this guy hasn't done anything, Mike, you're just going to have to concede. I mean, I know you're a stubborn Italian, and that's why we love you. But at the end of the day, you're just going to have to come to terms with reality. Need more cowbell. I hope Norm and Mike have made up. It got a little heated at the end of the series. We love each other. We're brothers, man. Like, we're just frustrated because, I mean, if you look at our shows this year with last year and the year before and the year before and the year before, they're pretty redundant and they're pretty repetitive. We're talking about a team that's left a lot to be desired. I mean, the Leafs won the division. They won the division. They beat the Senators. It was a strategic play, win the division, take on a weaker opponent. They did what they had to do in 6 games. They were up 2-0 against the Panthers, who may just win a second straight Stanley Cup because they're having their way with the Hurricanes. Up 2-0 into overtime of Game 3 with a chance to take a stranglehold on the series. They never did, and guess what? They buckle. I mean, how is that even possible? Now, central to it all, number 34. But we'll give him one more year, Mr. Augello. One more year, my friend. Veets, our boy. Hey, boys, Veets in the house, and yes, you will be our guy to buy. Thank you very much for that, Veets. Thank you very much. I mean, with Brendan Shanahan, again, his value 11 years ago, a lot different than his value now. And maybe we do owe him a debt of gratitude. Like, hey, Brendan, this organization was scraping the bottom of the barrel, right? Its value was there, but the aesthetic was terrible. The optics were awful. Nobody wanted to come here. I mean, Ole Jokinen was shitting on the organization after a 10-15 game foray with the team after being traded at the deadline. It was terrible. This guy shows up with the pedigree and helped to rebuild the image of the organization. All these new guys come on board, and then he starts getting his hands involved in the day-to-day and how the process would play out in the future, and it didn't work. So thanks for coming out. You did your thing. Here are your flowers. Go the hell and move on to other places like Lou Lamoriello and former employees of the Maple Leafs. But this organization has got its foundation, and it's time to go to work to build the team into the type of team that can survive the grind of a playoffs. Clearly, the core four cannot. And I mean, I don't know if you want to get into what's going to happen with Marner, which we all kind of believe. We already believe the kind of outcome, but we just never know until we see it. We can talk about that, Mike. We can talk about Tavares. We can talk about potential free agent signings in this show. If not, we can save that for the Sunday Spectacular for shows to come. I don't know. Let's wrap up here in the next 5 minutes.
Well, I'll just finish this on Shanahan, because Keith Pelly, the CEO of MLS&E, will be meeting with the media tomorrow. Not Brad for Living. It'll be Pelly, just Pelly, apparently. And it sounds as if what's going to happen, and they've already said Treliving is coming back.
It's imagine firing him.
No, I mean, there was some bullshit rumor out there that was being considered. I never thought that was possible.
Honestly, he's done a really good job.
Yeah. And I think what's going to happen here is that they're going to eliminate the position, and Treliving is going to report directly to Pelly.
Good. Why? That's $3 million they can save and allocate to players.
I mean, from what I heard, it was more than he was making more than 3. He was making like 7.
That's just disgusting.
Right. But
that's just, people can't even feed their families, pay rent, and all that kind of stuff. This guy's making $7 million to sit in a press box and take a fucking private jet back to New York City. Fuck off. That's egregious spending. And that the MLS&E should be ashamed of that. Thank God that's over, and hopefully that doesn't continue, because, I mean, I'm not a socialist guy. I don't give a damn. Make your money and do your thing. It's just a stupid way to spend money, right? Spend it on the fucking team. Spend it on scouting. Spend it on making this team a champion, not some figurehead who's already got millions in the bank. Last word to you, Mike. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, I would say that, like I said, it's going to be Treliving reporting directly to Pelly. You may, from the reports, they're going to see some streamlining of the Leafs organization. Maybe I don't think they're going to cut back on scouting, but they don't have many draft picks, so right now there could be some trimming, and that's probably part and parcel of them being taken over by Rogers. But it's good that there's going to be change. It's change that's long overdue. The thing that, and we'll talk about it on Sunday, the fact that they are going to lose Marner for nothing unless there's a sign and trade is abysmal. But they painted themselves into that corner when they gave him the no-move clause in the last 2 years of the deal and fired Dubas 5 weeks before the no-move clause kicked into effect. They made their bed. Now they have to sleep in it.
Is there any way a team can hold this ground and say, screw you and your no-move clause?
No. So
it's a player's game, Mike.
Yeah, and I somebody in the chat was like, oh, maybe they can trade Riley to Vancouver. Unless Morgan Riley wants to go somewhere, stop it. He's not going.
Who replaces him? Simon Benoit? I don't think so.
Yeah, he's their best offensive defenseman, so live with it.
Right. I was just thinking this too. Rob B, I don't know who you are. Thanks for being here. Montreal will soon leapfrog the delinquent Leafs, so I'll leave it at that. But Montreal is coming on. I mean, whether they sign a guy like Marner or not, that team is coming on. The thing that bothers me is the Leafs have had their window to kind of be at the top of the division, which they have for the last 6, 7, 8 years. A couple of division titles in there. Great. You've got the generational scorer, one of the best passers. Nylander's electric. Defara is the biggest signing. You've got them, Riley, always kind of underrated. But it's not going to last forever. Imagine this team having to go through either a half rebuild or a full-fledged rebuild and have nothing to show for it. And that's some anxiety that's kind of weighing in the back of Leaf fans' minds, especially like me, because I'd like for this team to at least have won something. Like you look at the Ovechkin era, 1 cup. At least he got a cup. At least he got a cup, and it almost kind of when it was least expected. But he did get a cup. Will the Leafs get their cup? Because with the Maple Leafs, people will laugh and people will hate, and that's just part of being a Maple Leafs fan. You think you're the greatest, and then people try to tear you down. If Leafs fans got 1 cup out of their team, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of them. They're going to be good with that. Right. But does we've come like within a win or two from another conference final, and now it seems so far away again. How do they reset, re-go, do things? Maybe not, maybe not have the kind of regular season that's they've been able to put together in the past, but still have the fans believe that once it's playoff time, the team is comprised and put together the right way to actually make up the difference that it was not able to overcome in years past. I mean, geez, it's just so exasperating, you know.
These fans will never believe until they actually do it.
Right.
You know, it's like, I'm sorry, you've exhausted all hope. Hope is dead. Proof is what it's like. It's the show me now. It's, you know, Toronto should be, you know, like Missouri is the show me state in the US. Toronto should be the show me city when it comes to hockey in Canada, because until this team shows people that they can come through in the clutch and win, nobody should believe it.
OG's Converse, here's what I need you to do. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. We have our own milestones that we're trying to hit. If you're on TikTok, I'm only on TikTok for one reason, and that's to produce content from the Leafs Convo that can be put out on like the biggest platform right now, and it's doing well. Mike and I, our conversation about Mitch Marner, a sign and trade, it's just blown up. 25,000 views on TikTok. I don't necessarily care about TikTok. I like the fact that a lot of people are sinking their teeth into our content. Do you still think a sign and trade is possible, Mike? Because a lot of people are jumping in saying it's ridiculous. And the thing is, they're echoing what I said to you in the moment. Why the hell would Marner do anything for this team? And why would any team do anything for the Maple Leafs?
It's not Marner doing it for the Leafs. It's Marner doing it for Marner, because he gets an 8th year and he gets another $13 or $14 million if he, you know, if there's a team out there that wants to, or if there's a team out there that wants to stretch the AAV out, the only way he's not going to get an 8-year deal from any team other than Toronto. And the only way he gets an 8-year deal, and if that doesn't matter to him, then fine. Then it's going to be like Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman went to Edmonton on a 7-year deal. There was a possibility of him getting an 8-year deal in Toronto, but he ended up not taking it. So, but you know, the thing that's guaranteed here, Mitch Marner is not going to be a Maple Leaf.
That's fine. That's fine. I want a bunch of seething fucking maniacs playing for this team next year. I don't care if it gets 92 points and is a wild card team. Bring me a team of lunatics. Michael Matthew, the OG of OGs. I love Kadri. He would have been great under Berube. Mike, you've known Michael Matthew for a very long time. We are aware of your dislike and disdain for Kadri because you take things personally the same way you're angry at Matt Sundin for not waiving his no trade clause. I've let that go. Look, I know Nazem personally. I know his father. I know a lot of people, Lebanese in the community in London, who worship Nazem Kadri. And, you know, we talk about some of the things that happened in those playoff rounds, and they're torn. So it's just on a personal level, I have my opinions. I don't think his actions were as malicious as you do. Michael Matthew, who I put a lot of stock into his comments when he does make them, because he's been around a long time, and we've had our ups and downs, but we've been on the same page for the last several years. This is a guy who does not like Marner, but he'd be on Team Kadri if he returned to the Maple Leafs. I mean, notwithstanding the amount of money he's making.
I mean, I think there's not a chance in hell that he's ever coming back. I mean, remember, he's 34 years old. He's almost as old as Tavares. So
how many years left on it? How many years left on his contract?
I think he's got like 4 years left.
So the money, if he were a free agent, a la Max Pacioretty, great, that would be awesome. But like, right. I mean, it's the money that would be an obstruction to him coming back. I mean, why would you spend that kind of money on a player like that?
Right. I mean, he's not on his last legs, but yeah, he's got 3 more years at 7. Going into next year, he'll be 3 years at $7 million. So,
Mike, real quick, Max Pacioretty, does he get re-signed? And we can talk about this Sunday. We're just kind of alluding to some of the things that we'll discuss.
now it sounds like Max Pacioretty is going to retire. He's spent the year away from his family. Maybe he hooks on with another team, but I think he's about ready to retire.
Are you hearing something?
No, he just based on his comments at locker cleanout, it did not sound like, he loved playing in Toronto, but his family was living. I think he's from Long Island. I think his family was living in Long Island while he was here in Toronto. And, if he could.
Why would he sign with another team and not Toronto?
Probably be closer to his family. I mean, if it's like New Jersey.
So he might follow Brendan Shanahan to the island.
Well, I don't know. I'm not trying to start a rumor. I'm just saying
right.
There was always some connection with him in the New York teams because he's from Long Island. But he played well. He served a purpose. He played very well in the playoffs for them. But I don't think he's going to be back. And I do think there's going to be some changes in the lineup. You're going to probably see. I would, if there's a buyout candidate on this team, David Kampf is the buyout candidate.
Yeah, and he's just such a relevant. Honestly, I mean, financially there are implications. Who gives a shit about David Kampf? I mean, how many times do we mention him in the podcast? What about Brad Marchand? You think that's a guy they would take a risk on?
I wouldn't be a risk, but I mean, I almost don't want to see it because honestly, it's like, I know he's a great player. I mean, he's just screwed them so many times, and his last screw job would be for them to sign him and then him being a complete piece of crap.
Really?
No way.
Does he have anything left in the tank?
He's the leading scorer for the Panthers.
So why
he's leading them in score?
He had some nice comments about the Maple Leafs. There was some
they were trollish, passive aggressive crap.
So okay, we'll dive into this as the weeks and months arrive leading up to when the Leafs can actually make some changes. CD, just remember Norman and Mike, Tim Lewicki hired Shanahan. Yeah. And again, Tim Lewicki coming from Los Angeles, a guy with a name. We wanted people to take us seriously. In a way, Brendan Shanahan through Tim Lewicki did their job. They hired Kyle Dubas, the boy wonder. It was just great times. Everybody was pumped. We had a lot of belief. Matthews, are you kidding me? Marner, are you kidding me? Nylander on his way. Riley was there signing Tavares. They did their job at the time. And guess what? 10 years later, not a whole lot of shit to show for it other than a couple of, division titles, some personal accolades, and 2 playoff series wins. So, the biggest franchise in hockey with the fewest trophies to show for it, at least over the last 55 years and counting. But we're here for it. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. You're doing yourself and us a disservice if you don't like the content. Subscribe to the channel. If you come back constantly and you cannot share with us your subscription ship or whatever the hell you want to call it, then I don't know why you keep coming back. Let's get together and let's help each other grow. We appreciate it. Mike, what's going on at Hockey Hot Stove?
Well, today I did a little review of the preview and outlook for the goaltending of the Leafs. I think that's probably going to be Wall and Stolarz again. But as you know, I think they still have to. The one thing that they didn't do, and I think was a mishandling by Craig Berube, is find out whether Joseph Wall's the number one. And what they did was split the duty. And I knew Stolarz was going to get hurt. I didn't think he was going to get concussed. But they still have to find out whether Joseph Wall's the number one. And if he's not, then you move on from him or you go out and you sign somebody. But they have to give him the work next year. Anthony Stolarz is a good 1B or a great backup. He is not a starter in this league.
This team needs 3 to 4 to 5 new players to come in with a fervor and a purpose to help elevate this organization. I don't want to get into a controversy over who's in goal and whether or not we have the horses back there to help make the dream come to reality. I think what we've seen over the last several weeks, we do. And if they want to fight tooth and nail on the ice for the opportunity to get number one and have the, one go up and one go down and the results be favorable to the Maple Leafs, that would be great. But if we get into a fucking goalie controversy because we can't trust one of these guys and we got to go back to Matt Murray or got to go back to some free agent signing or we got to trade for someone, that's going to set this organization back. We need, again, starts from the net out. I think it's there, Mike. There are just so many other things that need to be addressed up front, but in front of these goaltenders that needs attention immediately, that anything else just really sets this organization back. But that will remain to be seen. OG's Conference, the Sunday Spectacular is just around the corner. Mike, real quick. Is it going to be Panthers Stars in the final? And do the Panthers win their second straight Stanley Cup? Because the way they're going right now, and again, just how they've built themselves into something completely different and maybe different than what we've seen from their successes over the last several years, off the backs of the Maple Leafs, can they be stopped?
Yeah, they can be stopped. I mean, but they're going to get probably a nice long rest after they sweep Carolina the way things are going, because they've dominated Carolina. Carolina had won all their home games going into the series, and now they're going to lose both at home the way it's going. And then going back to Florida, I mean, they just seem to have Carolina's number. Yeah. If they sweep them or beat them in 5, then they're going to get some good rest while Dallas and Edmonton kill each other. And then I think they have a chance. I think they're better than Edmonton. I don't think they're better than Dallas, but it'll be a really good series if it's Florida-Dallas.
Would the Leafs have done to Carolina what the Panthers seem to be doing to them?
No, but I think they would be. I think they were better than Carolina. I think they were better than Carolina, but
so frustrating. So frustrating. This team was up 2-0 into overtime of Game 3.
Yep.
Okay, let's just shut it down. Guys, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Over 100 people in the chat. Let's get several thousand on the show. If you're on TikTok, follow us, like the content. We appreciate it very much. Mike and I are counting down the minutes, the hours, the days before we get to do the Sunday Spectacular. And we're trying to iron out a schedule for what we'd like to do over the summer months. Rest assured, Mike and I will be continuing to do content. Really just depends. As we get into kind of July and August, it'll wind down, but September will ramp up. The goal for this project is to get through 10 seasons. So season 7 is winding down. That means 8, 9, and 10. And then we'll go from there. There's going to be a lot more gray hair, and I'm sure a lot more frustration, but who knows? Maybe within that time, the Leafs will finally get it done. And after that, we'll just shut it down. Ben Ho, good show, boys. Benny, good to see you, buddy. You got to come back constantly. For Mr. Augello in Chickawaga, New York, I'm Norman James in Byron, Ontario. The Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford, for now, is out. We'll see you on Sunday.